You know those movies that you see and those books that you read that you vaguely remember being good, but you have no recollection of what they were about? Well, that's probably because they were entertaining, but they didn't really have a strong message. So what makes a story meaningful? If a story has a strong statement in it, and if it's done well, then the story will have meaning. And generally, the statement will fall into either one of two categories. It either makes a statement about humanity and who we are or are not, or about morality and who we should or should not be. I've been seeing a trend in the last couple of years that's been bothering me, and it's not exclusive to YA, but that's the context in which I'm going to be talking about it today. Morality and humanity have been topics explored since the dawn of storytelling, and that's because they're really important to examine and explore. While some topics fall in and out of fashion, these are so broad and inconclusive that they can be explored endlessly. Some may argue that we've already exhausted them, that we know what good and bad looks like, but I disagree. As culture and technology change, humans are faced with new questions that challenge our humanity and our morality. When we look at the growing polarization of politics and beliefs that's happening throughout the world today, we can see that morality is perhaps not so black and white. People have different responses to fear, and their beliefs dictate what they think is the best response to a threat. There's so much room to explore these responses and what drives them. With globalization comes new challenges because people's beliefs and ways of life are constantly being questioned, and that can make people scared and defensive. But culture isn't the only thing that's rapidly changing. If we look at technology, there's plenty there that questions our humanity as well. Advancements in automation are leaving people jobless, and that begs questions about our purpose as humans and what we do when we have no explicit purpose. Not only that, but with the advancement of artificial intelligence, there's plenty to look at when it comes to understanding consciousness and again what it means to be human. But what I've seen recently in young adult fiction is little examination of these, or at least a very surface level understanding of them. There are of course many examples of books that do examine these well, but what I'm seeing is an overwhelming lack of exploration around these topics. Harry Potter explores these themes really well. Even though there is a clear good and bad in the forms of Harry and Voldemort, we see characters who straddle the line like Snape, Draco, Sirius, and Lupin. Not only that, but we see divisiveness within the wizarding community, with mudbloods being attacked for simply being born to the wrong parents. There are countless other positive examples within this series, but that's for another video. Since Harry Potter though, I've seen less and less of this, so let's look at a few other books that fail at being meaningful. Let's start with Twilight. Now some may argue that since it's a romance, it's exempt from needing to have a message, but I'm here to prove you wrong. All of the best romances have commentary on humanity or morality, or sometimes both. Shakespeare was masterful at this, looking at, for example, family, social class, youth, and sacrifice in his play Romeo and Juliet, and even more complex topics in Hamlet and Macbeth. And skipping forward, there are authors like Jane Austen who examine how social and economic class affects relationships. Even Walt Disney questioned morality and humanity in his adaptations of classic fairy tales. But let's go back to Twilight. The problem seems to be that the protagonist doesn't have any strong convictions or beliefs in general, but especially when it comes to the vampires, except maybe that they're cool. These are creatures that need to feed on blood to sustain themselves. Even vegetarian vampires like the Cullens have a strong impulse to kill, and that means that they're dangerous. Bella doesn't really seem to care about that though, and the topics are glossed over because of it. While the novels have the potential to dive into the complex and interesting topics of humanity, which could be looked at in the paranormal context of the book, it doesn't really look that far into it. It doesn't make any real statements about love, or obsessive relationships, or power dynamics within relationships, especially a relationship as unique as theirs. It also could have gone deeper into the morality of these beings, but instead, vegetarian vamps are good and regular vamps are bad. Look at Victoria's clan and the Volturi. Stephanie Meyer did broaden this a little bit in the last book and in the spin-off The Short Second Life of Bree Tanner, but even then it felt basic. An even worse offender to me, and I don't say this lightly because let's be real, Twilight did a lot wrong, is the Mortal Instruments series. In this story, good and bad is very clear-cut despite the over-the-top twists and turns in the plot. While again, the author could have delved deep into the consequences of angel, demon, and human blood and their consequences and effects, instead she examines it on a very surface-level basis, preferring to look at it in the context of what magic these beings can do. She doesn't apply the genetic differences of these creatures to humanity or nature, and instead we're just given a series of plot twists that are ripped off from Star Wars. Now let's look at Throne of Glass, and I honestly don't even know where to start with this one. Now, I didn't read the rest of the series because I didn't like the first book, so I don't want any comments saying it gets better. It shouldn't have to get better, it should just start good. But I'm also looking at just the first book, so maybe Sarah J. Maas kind of expands and grows and develops a message throughout the series, but I'm just gonna look at the first book. So let's try to dig deep into the mediocrity and find some sort of deeper meaning or message. Spoiler alert, I couldn't find any. The bad guy is bad, the good guy is good, and that kind of stays the same throughout the entire novel. There is one example that doesn't stay true to this, but it's not even a true example because the good guy turned bad isn't actually a good guy turned bad, it's just the protagonist that mistakes it to be that. It's a survival story, but the protagonist never digs deep and discovers anything about herself. Instead, it's just plot with very little character development and no clear message that the author's trying to convey. But I don't want to be a complete downer. Let's look at a YA novel that does delve deep into these topics and does it really well. The Hunger Games, especially the first book, looks at our relationship with media, desensitization to violence, and reality television. Katniss is willing to die for the people that she loves, and that shows her character's conviction. In her scenes in the Capitol, we can clearly see the potential that humans have at being weak, selfish, and vain. By contrasting that with scenes from District 12, we can clearly see what humans can be in difficult circumstances. In the Capitol, we get a sense of falsity and loneliness, but in the districts we see that when things get tough, people are forced to work together. We see this when Katniss and Gale hunt together in the woods and share the fruits of their labor equally. We also see this in the flashback with Peeta and the bread. And we also see this in the truest act of selflessness. Katniss is willing to sacrifice herself for her sister when her sister's name gets drawn. What makes this dystopian society so shocking and impactful is that we're able to see the truths behind it. While we're able to see the flaws in this false utopia because of the perspective of the novel, we're also forced to admit that this society has a lot of similarities to our own. I find that there have been a lot of novels since that have tried to cash in on the popularity of dystopian YA, but have failed to do so as successfully because the authors have failed to create messages that ring true. So let's look at what I like to think is a basic set of rules that imbues meaning into a story. Number 1, the author has to have something that they want to say. Number 2, the characters, especially the protagonist, have to have a set of strong beliefs and convictions that pertain to the author's message. And not only that, but they have to act according to those beliefs. I'm not saying that you have to have a strong protagonist. You can have a protagonist that we would consider weak. But even those characters will have beliefs in what they think will make the world a better place, their lives a better place, etc. The characters then need to have those beliefs challenged by their circumstances, the other characters that they meet, and most importantly, the antagonist. Lastly, their beliefs either need to change or become stronger as a result of the story. World building and plot elements should exaggerate and solidify the themes and ideas that you wish to convey. But the bottom line is that we need to do better and expect better if we want to see a positive change in the stories that are being produced. I want stories that are going to make me think long after the novel is over, and I hope that you want that too. So that's all I have for you today, guys. Until now, my videos have been largely unscripted, and that is a lot easier, but I would love to produce more content like this. It just takes a lot more time and research, so if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more content like this, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, comment, share, everything, so that I know that this is something that is important to you as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.